this is the interview I've been kind of waiting on for 2 years, actually. Like, I made these questions up, like, on my phone, and then I looked at the date. It was like 2018. Like, wow. I'm like, wow, man. But, like, you know, I know how your last... Yeah. I know how your last couple of years been, but I really appreciate you taking time out to do this, man, because I know you're really busy. Yeah. So for the last 4 or 5 years, first I want to say happy birthday to AJ. You know, AJ.
Oh yeah, today.
I called him up. I called
Big
him
AJ.
Yeah.
Big AJ, as my friends say. Big AJ.
Yeah, man. So I've been watching so many interviews on YouTube and stuff for you, man. And I'm like, man, I can do one of them interviews, man. I know you be answering a lot of questions, the same ones. I'm like, maybe I could bring a different perspective to it. So, yeah, that's what we're going to try to do. Okay, so, like, I want to give me a timeline of the last 4 or 5 years. Not going all the way back, because, I mean, most of the interviews, they go all the way back. So I want to go from, like, let's Diggy's project here. And kind of give Simmons. What was the name of that? That thing you did here?
Yeah.
I think that's when it kind of started. Yeah.
Yep, the startup.
That's when the shit hit the fan type of stuff. So we're going to go from there. You can just kind of, like, give us all the projects that you've done up until then. You don't have to get really deep into it, but that's like when it all started.
Yeah. Well, actually, that was kind of a low point for me in my life a little bit. You know, I definitely hit a little bit of a bump, I guess. I mean, this is like, I moved it back to LA in 1950. I say 1950. I moved back to LA in 2010. I was just turning 50. And I had definitely a couple of years there, 2 or 3 years. Some of it was just being in LA, just trying to get situated.
Yeah.
And stuff was pretty slow for me, work for me. And then I just sort of went back home for a second and just to chill. And I remember I got a call from Paul Garnes, who was the producer for the Akils, that's Mar, Brock, and Salim Akils. And they had a bunch of TV shows at BET at the time. Well, they had actually had Girlfriends before that, which wasn't on BET. And then they had gone to BET and they'd done The Game. And they eventually did Being Mary Jane. They had several shows. And so this was a pilot. They called me, Paul was producing for them, and they called me like 2 or 3 days before I was supposed to go back to LA, Paul Garnes. I had met Paul when I worked for just a few days on Ava DuVernay's Middle of Nowhere, which my friend Bradford Young shot. He introduced me to Paul. Paul was the producer on that. So they just reached out to me. I remember Paul calling and just said, hey, what you doing? I said, he said, where you at? I said, I'm in Atlanta. He said, what you doing? I said, I'm on my way back to LA in the next couple of days. He said, well, don't go nowhere yet. And I was like, wow, what's up? He said, the Kill's about to shoot the pilot for a TV series, and they, want to know if you're interested in shooting it.
Yeah.
And I was very interested because I was very broke at the time, actually. So I was.
And you know what? I remember, man, because you remember you had texted me about your stuff being in storage. I was like, and I knew, I said, okay, something finna go on, man. Because when you came here, then we did Dreams the same time, right? That you was here.
Dreams was afterwards, because what happened was, so that was out of the blue, getting to shoot that, and that turned out to be like maybe, I think all total was about maybe 6 weeks. Okay. Because we did some pre-production. And then we shot for a couple of weeks, I think. And then there was a little bit of a time after that, like where they were trying to get me to go to New York right after to do some pickup shots, because it was set in New York, but of course we shot in Atlanta, like a lot of things, in Georgia, And so when I finished, I went back to LA. I moved almost into a new apartment. I had bought a car. I bought my Prius, which is, I got that. I shipped the Prius. I actually had the production. They shipped it for me. They shipped the Prius from Atlanta to New York for me. I remember the Prius.
I got a picture with me, you, and
Oh, and Hans. And
Me and you
Hans.
and Hans, yeah, in
Right.
front of the Prius, yeah.
My main man Hans Charles, producer,
Yeah.
cinematographer, and he came down to work with me on that. Him and Nah, who was the gaff on that. So that was a good situation. But I got back to LA and I went to Hawaii for Christmas. For the
Cool.
Christmas holiday with Nzinga and not Nzinga, with Isla and Sine.
Okay.
And then when I got back to LA, the idea was that the show was going to be greenlit, and they told me that we would start shooting like as early as February.
Uh-huh.
And BET didn't greenlight it. I mean, they said they were going to greenlight it, but it got pushed. Mm-hmm. So I was sitting in LA thinking like, damn, man, what am I going to do? I don't really want to go back to being sitting around not working and stuff. And Khalil had been approached about doing this documentary because it was coming up on this is like 2013.
Right.
So it was coming up on the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, which of course was like 53, right? 63, right. Sorry. 63. In Germany, ZDF, the German, like kind of, it's like almost like a German PBS. And they had this program 2 nights. They needed this basically 60-minute long documentary. And so Khalil, who was going to do it, but basically, I think mostly just couldn't get his head wrapped around. I think it's an age thing, like a generation thing, you know?
Yeah.
So before he gave it back to him, he said, hey, man, this is something you think you'd be interested in doing? And I remember just saying like, yeah, I'm going to make it something interesting. I'll be interested in doing.
Yeah, I remember when you told me about it, man, that you were going to do it. I'm like, okay. You know?
Yeah, it was a kind of like, I just wrote a crazy treatment. It was crazy. It wasn't really, strictly speaking, what they had asked for. But I had told the commissioner in the beginning, I was like, look, I don't know if I want to do something about the March on Washington. I was sort of like, haven't I seen that before? I kept thinking like, I think I've seen that documentary before about the March on Washington. And she said, well, what would you want to do? And I said, well, I would want to do something about what Black folks had now. That's how I framed it. And I said, we could call it in the afterlife or the aftermath of the March on Washington, with the Black president and all this kind of stuff, how Black people feel about what they're at now. So they was like, okay, just go ahead and do it. And I always was like very shocked that they gave me the go ahead, but I really think more than anything this had to do with they just didn't have any more time to find anybody else. So we pretty much had very little oversight, which was great. And, to a certain degree, I ended up just basically picking people I knew.
Yeah.
Meaning like folks I knew, the Sadias and the Fred Mons and folks like that, like Hortense Spillers, Rich Blunt, bunch of folks I knew. And then my family, of course, which is like my dad and a few other people. So, and it was done really quickly if you remember.
Yeah, I remember when we shot it, we was in the hotel watching the finals. Or maybe the conference finals. LeBron was with Cleveland. And we was watching Indiana or somebody, you was asking me the questions. I'm like, dang, how's this going to relate, to the March on Washington? And so, it was cool on the way you did it. And then when it finally came out, I was like, wow, it was really different, man. And I noticed that it's kind of making a resurgence, right? Dreams
it's making a resurgence, but that's like one of the things that I did. Like you said, in some ways, that was the beginning of my sort of current situation because that thing, even though it was on Netflix or anything like that, it was a big hit from the beginning. Like it showed at the Black Star Film Festival where I got an award. And then the New York Film Festival reached out and said, could they show it? So, so I did that. And like from the beginning, I remember this sister, I think her name is Claudette. She teaches at University of Virginia. She was just saying that piece has become like canonical. It's like a canonical piece just because, if nothing else, it's just the people that it has in it are people who were definitely prominent then, but since then, which is like 7 years ago, 7 years ago, man, everybody in that thing, you got like multiple MacArthur winners and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
So man, so the thing about it is, and that was one of the only like real sort of points of contention I had when they were giving me the go ahead to do it because they had a list of people that they wanted me to talk to. And I didn't really want to talk to those people. And it
just
wasn't
the normal civil rights people.
No, not so much even civil rights people, but they were just more, I don't want to mention anybody's name because it wasn't against anybody. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It was just more like, there were people that everybody's seen, like in interviews and stuff. I was kind of like, I remember telling the commissioner. Why do this over
and over and over? Huh?
I remember telling the commissioner, I said, if this was 1963 and you were making a documentary and somebody was saying, who do you want to interview, like, Sammy Davis Jr. or James Baldwin, they would have said Sammy Davis Jr. because Sammy Davis Jr. obviously was a movie star, more of a celebrity than James Baldwin. But I was like, but the person everybody knows who you wanted in that moment is James Baldwin, because at the end of the day, the stuff that he said in that time was the most articulate, most insightful stuff that anybody was really saying in that particular moment, So I was like, y'all have to really defer to me and just let me pick the people. I think they were more concerned about like their audience, because it was meant for a German audience. Like the audience is going to be able to identify with the people they see. But I was kind of like, y'all don't worry about that. Let me pick the folks. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think I was very much vindicated in that, because everybody thinks,
that took his whole life of its own, man. That documentary, even though it is related to that subject, it's kind of like its own subject. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it became a kind of, I don't even want to say a time capsule so much, because like I say, everybody in it is kind of still, it's not like people are fading. People are still getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's becoming like a kind of, like a real, like, what's the word? Prophetic kind of articulation of where Black people are at, and just Blackness in general as a sort of, as there was some ontological construction. It's just like, you can see, like, even in this moment with Black Lives Matter and all this kind of stuff, it's just something that just seems like people, they had their finger on the pulse, you know what I mean? Where everything's kind of starting to get to, And it's also not, for people who've seen it, it's not like a film that's like, as much as it is about the moment, it got a kind of timeless quality. Like, people are not, it's not like a newscast. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, this is a news event, and then after that moment, you know what I mean? It's kind of dated. It doesn't have that feel like that. People really are talking about these issues in very sort of complicated and contemplative and introspective ways. You know what I mean? It's not just like, oh, people are burning shit in the streets. It's not like that at all. It's like people are actually thinking. I think it's definitely one of the thing. You see folks thinking, thinking a lot. Yeah.
And you was talking about the talking heads. Or not, the lack of talking. And
I think that's probably. No,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just saying. Yeah. Go ahead.
It is, man. It's what sets it apart, really, because they kind of taking me on into this other subject, and I don't want to cut you off because
no.
You got, after that, you had, what came after that, pretty much.
Oh, after Dreams, basically,
Love is a message.
Love is a message.
That was your big thing.
It was a big thing. It was like, I basically had gotten a couple of jobs, man, so I was like, and there was some of it was based on Dreams to a certain degree. I got this thing for YouTube, and I got a couple of little things I was doing. And
what thing for YouTube?
Well, it never came out. I was going to do never came out, because they wanted something for Black History Month. And they said they wanted it, but then the idea of it actually scared them off. Like, when they really actually started seeing some of the stuff, it scared them off. And they just basically went and did something else, which was cool with me, because I was in New York and I was just sort of like chilling, and then I was just messing around. And that's when I basically put Love Is a Message together. I put together, like, really quickly, like a couple of hours, I think.
Yeah, you told me.
Like 2 hours, yeah.
More or less. The rollout, man. The rollout of that.
Well, the thing, it kind of, as you remember, it took on a life of its own, because I didn't know what I was going to do with it. I just had done it. My first impulse was just like to put it on YouTube. And when I got back to LA, a bunch of friends of mine, mostly Khalil, I would say, as much more than anybody else, but definitely encouraging me or urging me not to put it on YouTube. Everybody was like, don't put it on YouTube, don't put it on YouTube. And I was like, why not? And they were like, no, just sit tight. And then I was like, I didn't quite know why we were sitting tight, because honestly, it had never occurred to me, the whole idea of showing it in the art world. I just said, it never even dawned on me. But maybe it did dawn on Khalil, because he had done this piece with Kendrick Lamar called Mad City. And the MoCA, the sort of LA Museum of Contemporary Art, had actually purchased it for their collection. So maybe he had some sense of it that I didn't have of it, but I was just kind of like, I just wanted people to see it. And he actually had started screening it down at the Underground Museum before, because they have a series every year called Purple Garden Cinema, where they show movies in the backyard at the museum. And he had started showing Love Is a Message before each of the films every week. You know, every week when they would have a new film, it would like, you know, they would show Love Is a Message, and they would show whatever the feature film was. And then I think I must have gone there like maybe 3 or 4 films into the series. I think it was The King of Comedy they were showing with Robert De Niro, Scorsese film, and Jerry Lewis. And I remember walking into the museum, and
people
all
like
these
that
people who I didn't know were coming up to me. Yeah, exactly. I never forget this Rasta, white guy, Rastafarian though, coming up to me and saying, "Much respect." And I was like, "What?" I was like, "What? Much respect." And then it just turned out that everybody who had been coming to this multiple times. And then after that, basically, I've told the story quite a few times. Khalil basically took, unbeknownst to me, took Love Is a Message to Art Basel with him, because he was showing his cut of Lemonade, and same thing. He screened it before he showed his cut of Lemonade, and my dealer Gavin Brown happened to be in the audience. He saw it, as I've been told. Went up to Khalil afterwards and said, what in the hell was that? You know, and Khalil said, that's my boy AJ's thing, you know. And then Gavin definitely tracked me down and he called me. And then, you know, I finally, like a couple of weeks after he first called me, I was in New York working on a job, and he said, look, let's have a meeting when you come to town. We did have that meeting, and we talked for a long time, like 5 or 6 hour lunch. And he called me first thing the next morning and said, hey, look, I think we should do this. And I said, do what? And he said, well, first of all, I think we should show this piece. I was like in the gallery? You mean? He was like, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. I said, when you want to like show it, like next year or something? He was like, no, I want to show it in 2 weeks. And I was like, what? You know what I mean? I was like, because he hadn't opened it at that time, but he was he was moving towards opening the space in Harlem. And so, you know, roughly 3 weeks later, it turned out to be just about 3 weeks. Roughly 3 weeks later, I was back in New York. You know, you came up for that and had a big opening. Like people still talk about the opening. It was crazy.
That party, man, I'm telling you,
the party was nuts. Yeah,
we done been to some parties. We were just talking about the party in Venice, but that party, man, in New York was like, I don't know who that DJ, man. Who that DJ?
It was Reborn. It was Reborn. It was DJ Reborn, who I requested. Robin, she threw down, and I think some of it too was like Trump had just been elected, so there was a lot of people just wanted to let off some steam.
Dave Chappelle's show was that night.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember we was watching it on the couch.
Right. I forgot about that.
AJ
you forgot
there.
Yeah, you're
night.
right. You're right. They actually screened it in the gallery that night before the party. They made it so people could see the show. You're right. I had forgotten about that.
Yeah,
but
cool,
I remember like people were dancing hard, throwing down. Man.
It was on, bro. Yeah. So Love, and then you went to Venice.
Stuff that happened. Well, a couple of things happened because you know what had happened was after that I had been asked to do a show in London at the Serpentine Gallery. So that was like November, I guess. It was like late November when Love Is a Message opened, and then I think in March was they had an opening in London at the Serpentine, and that happened, and that kind of went off. You know, everybody was like, "Oh, this shit is dope." And then we literally went like 2 or 3 days later. Me and Gavin got on the train and went to Art Basel in Switzerland. Okay. And that's where Apex showed for the first time in public. So for me, it was a little bit of a perfect storm in a sense because, you know, I had like 3 separate things out. Like I think initially like a lot of people had heard about Love Is the Message, but they hadn't seen it in Europe. And then the Serpentine Show, which is a completely different body of work. And then, like I said, I went to Art Basel and we showed Apex in this section called Art Unlimited. And it was a big hit because people still talk about it. But I don't think at that time anybody knew. They didn't connect the dots. Nobody. I think at that point nobody knew. It was like, oh, it's the same cat.
Oh,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's the same cat. And
you know, I had never heard that song until you sent me the video of Kanye. So I thought that was like his video.
Yeah.
I said, damn, he's doing this work for Kanye, you know what I mean? Like when you sent it to me, I was like, wow, you know, that's a nice song. Yeah. I never heard of it, you know.
It's incredible. Yeah, I had just seen, I saw it like maybe a week after I put that first cut of the piece together. Like, he was on Saturday Night Live. I forget what the song, it wasn't, because that wasn't a single for the song, for the album. It was another song that was a kind of bigger hit. And then as a second song, he performed that Ultralight Beam. He had the whole choir on there on Saturday Night Live and everything. You know, I was like, wow, this song's incredible. And I basically just had recorded it. I wasn't recording it thinking I'm gonna use it or anything at that point. Yeah. I just had recorded it. And you know, when I got back in the editing room, like a few days later, I just
put it down.
You know, just totally intuitive, just put it down. I was like, oh, this is interesting. Really, really interesting. And then I just spent the next, you know, few weeks like tinkering with it. And then, you know, and then as I said, you know, Khalil took it to Basel with him and Gavin some, and you know, that's how it happened. So, and then after that, you know, I had Art Basel. I get back, I literally flew from Art Basel and did the Jay-Z video.
Oh yeah,
444.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that was the only reason I even left. I would have just hung out in Europe for a while, but
that's amazing when Jay-Z get lost in all of this. that's what kind of road you're on, man.
I was on the road. Yeah,
just kind of like slip my mind, you know.
Yeah.
But I was looking up on YouTube, and I think between 4 videos. It was Jay-Z, Kanye, and then Classic Man, and then Salad. It's like over 100 million views, man, between those videos. That's pretty good. Just 4.
That's not too bad. That's not too bad.
100 million, man. And Kanye just came out last month. So that was cool. But that's cool, man. Yeah, man.
Yeah, the video thing is so different, you know. It's like, even like with the new Kanye thing, it was just like, you know, it comes out like in 3 days, it'd be like, you know, 500,000 people, some shit like that.
Yeah.
It's so different from the art world where, you know, like Love Is the Message.
It takes a while.
A lot of people have seen it, but not really that many in terms of like a percentage
it's not out there. It's not out there.
It's not available for people in the same kind of way, you know. So,
and you know what? When you did that, when you do that, like at first I'm probably like everybody else. Dang, why you don't put it out? You know, put it out. You know, but then now looking back, you know, that's kind of what made you who you are. You know what I mean? It's definitely like people, they have to search out to find your actual work, except for the videos, you know, or they go to one of your shows or something like that. So it just gives it that much more of a mystique, kind of like a Prince feel, you know. You know?
I remember like I remember my friend Malik, you know, who's in the Nation, and he was just saying, it was like, that's why like we charge for Final Call, you know, because like Black people don't really respect anything that they don't pay for, you know, or something like that. It just has something to do with like this whole idea that it's all right to make people pay for things, to have to work for things a little bit, because everybody's so used to folks giving them stuff, and like in a way, when sometimes when you give stuff away too easily, people don't value it. You know what I mean? They don't take the same kind of time with it. They don't consider
I remember
it in
one
the same
time
way.
you was trying to get money for one of your projects, and you were gonna do a what do you call it? The Kickstarter. And I told you, I said, man, nah, I wouldn't do it, you know, because people kind of like they kind of look at it like, okay, you know, why is he trying to get up money if he's that good? You know what I mean? But it's just it's a mind thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it really is.
People, man. You know,
nah, it really is. I mean, I've been very blessed, man. You know, like if you look back on it, it seems so premeditated or strategic or tactical or something like that, but it wasn't. It was just like, it was just a perfect storm. Stuff just fell into place.
Yeah, it really is falling into place, man.
You know,
and we were just talking about
you make your luck a little bit too. You know, you make your luck like, or you prepare for your luck.
Right.
And I prepared for a long time.
Long time, man. Long time. And I've been just sitting here thinking, like I said, you know, I want to kind of go kind of more into like our childhood side, you know.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like, but one of the things before I get into that is that, you know, you've been working with Kanye, and also in Dreams, one of the things you said about the camera not pointing to people while they're talking because it acts as a white gaze, you know, for Black people. But now, you know, I think about now with the whole Kanye Trump thing, I think the Black gaze is more powerful than the white gaze is to Black people. You know what I mean? Like, because we're not used to, a lot of us, not everybody, but some people are not used to people working with people that they don't agree with, you know, and Kanye for one, you know what I mean? Like a lot of people, when I tell them, you know, he's doing Kanye video, they're like, Kanye, you know what I mean? Like, you're the devil now, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, you know, it's work, you know. That's the guy's a brilliant guy, you know what I mean? So
but I have some feelings.
On that a little bit.
Yeah, you know, well, first of all is about the gays thing. I mean, I do think, you know, sometimes the things I say they're like, in some ways, as much as anything, they're sort of conceptual puzzles. Like they're things that people have to think, you know, it's like things to think about.
We don't
it's not like
sometimes, like
yeah, I wasn't never suggesting all movies with Black people in them shouldn't have Black people, you know, talk. You shouldn't see people talking, you know. But it was like just to say, look, the reason that Black people sometimes freeze up a little bit in front of the cameras because historically, you know, we're always on the run. We're always trying to be out of the view of the police and all those forces in society that try to constrain us. You know what I mean? Like they say bad boys move in silence, you know? There's something about like, okay, when the sun goes down, we can really get into what we're trying to get into. But if not, there are too many looky-loos around, you know? So that's some of it. But I do think these things change. And, you know, like when you say the Black gaze, you know, it's interesting to think of it because to a certain degree, social media has transformed our relationship to media. You know, like in the past, movies or television, we just had no control of that. We were always sort of objects in that, you know? But the way, you know, between people using their cell phone cameras, YouTube, TikTok, World Star Hip Hop, people are putting themselves on, you know what I mean? Those platforms are more democratic. So we are starting to have a different relationship to the sort of representations of us that we see, that we share. Now, on the other idea, which was I forgot that fast. Like people have asked me about this whole thing of working with Kanye, you know, and for me, it's not that complicated. I mean, beyond the fact that, as you said, he's a brilliant musician, a brilliant artist, really.
Right.
And the fact that, you know, even from the beginning, like he's, you know, my work and his work have been, to use the term, entangled, just because love is the message, you know.
Right.
I like to say, I told somebody I thought like Love is the Message was what I call an asymmetrical collaboration because, you know, I just basically took what he did and I fused it. But what I did, I didn't really ask him for permission or anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
So in a way, it wasn't as much of a dialogue as like the new thing we did. But this whole idea, first of all, the whole cancel culture and all that, I'm not for that. I'm not for like people being like thrown away because of something they said in particular, much less something that they did. In most instances, it's not even anything anybody did. It's something that somebody said and somebody doesn't agree with the opinion. And it's not to say, I'm not trying to diminish people's disdain for being a
Trump.
pro-Trump person. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I'm not pro-Trump.
And I think
I'm anti-Trump.
it's really more Trump than it is Kanye. You know what I mean? Because
but you know, I think like his whole thing, Kanye's whole thing is like, for him, it's really about being able to be a free thinker.
Right.
Being able just to say the idea, like, hey, look, we've been taken for granted. And I'm not trying to be an apologist for Kanye.
No. I respect that about him.
For me, it's like, I do respect that about him too. I mean, ultimately for me, I like to say, I want to be judged by the work I do. I want to be judged by what I do. I don't want to be judged by who I'm standing next to, because I don't know who I'm standing next to.
Right.
For
That's
example,
just like people saying, well, you know, why work for Trump even? If he had a job to do, I'm like, you telling me all the people that you've gotten paid from, none of them have been racist? You know what I mean? Like, it's money. You know what I mean? You're doing the job, you do it by. You know what I mean? You get the money to do what you're gonna do with it, but you can't be like,
that's a slippery.
Work, man.
That's a real slippery slope when you start talking about you're gonna clear the philosophy, because most folks, at the end of the day, mostly, I would say a large percentage of folks, I mean the larger, like 80%, probably more, people are working for somebody who's very, very rich at the end of the day, and more often than not, they're not going to agree with that person's politics.
Right. And they don't look into them like that, but they kind of hold black people, I think, to a different, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. I have to acknowledge that, because you're talking about like, a very famous person going on to basically co-sign on somebody. So I get that whole thing. But see, I don't even like the idea of co-signing. I don't like the idea that if I'm famous and I say so and so is cool, you supposed to think that person is cool. That's what's fucked up. That's fucked up. In the same way, I don't believe, like, if I stand next to somebody who you don't like or you have a bad feeling about, you're going to collapse me into your feelings about that person. Because, like, say, I give you another one of, the best examples on, like, Bill Cosby. How many people took pictures with Bill Cosby?
Right.
Like, in the scope of things.
Right.
Millions of people have photos of themselves standing next to Bill Cosby, right?
Right.
Colleges took money from them, the Cosbys, for scholarships and stuff. This brother, not to compare this brother at Morehouse, who just paid off all the college debt of the whole class at Morehouse. Don't nobody know nothing about him. Don't nobody know nothing about his private life. People don't even really know anything about his political affiliations, right? But the gesture of paying off the student's loan is good. It don't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter if he turns out to be a child abuser or something.
Right.
It's horrible that if he was a child abuser, that would be horrible in itself. But the thing is, I guess I have it's a pet peeve of mine, this idea of people not allowing the thing to be the thing on its own right. Like, in other words, like I say this sometimes and people's like, that's extreme, AJ. I say, like, Hitler was a vegetarian. Okay. Now, vegetarianism is a good thing.
Right.
But I don't think because Hitler is a vegetarian, that means he wasn't a monster.
Right.
In the same way, I don't believe because he was a monster, it means vegetarianism is bad.
Yeah, it's just
people
like
have a hard time understanding that things
you can be black and white. You know what I mean? You can have both. It's like Trump. If he says something that's true, it don't mean it ain't true just because it came from Trump. You know what I mean? Like, he can
like they said,
it still could be true.
The truth can come out of a lion's mouth, or as they say, the truth can come out of the devil's mouth. Yep, right? It don't. True is true. Because what it is, this whole need for the truth only to come out of a quote unquote true person's mouth.
Good person, yeah.
And the bad only come out of a bad person's mouth. What that's really about is people wanting the world to be simple.
Right.
They don't want the world to be complex. They want to be able to not think for themselves. And so if somebody who you believe in,
it's kind of like Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black.
That shit is whack. I don't care if we want Biden to be president over Trump. That shit is whack.
Right.
It's whack. It's whack. It don't mean he's a horrible person. It don't mean like he's a KKK member, but look, that's some racist shit.
It really
that's some
is,
racist shit. It really is. So,
yeah,
I want him to be president too, but that's some racist shit.
But you know what? That's one thing I admire about you. And, we grew up, you were always different. We grew up and we be doing our thing and you be doing your thing. And, a lot of people didn't understand it, what I mean? But everybody knew it was like, damn, it's something different. It's something different. And you wasn't really afraid to do your own thing, man. I appreciate that. It looked like it's
some of it I don't even know if I had a choice, man. I was just wired the way I was wired.
Yeah.
I was sort of conscious. But and the thing for me too, I would say this. I don't put I'm not a hierarchical thinker. I mean, some things I like better than other things, but I don't like this because this is legitimate and that's not legitimate. It's like, to me, it's the thing in itself. If it's good, it's good. If it's good, it's good. Like, somebody might ask me, what's the most creative thing you've ever done? Like, they might ask me that. What's your greatest work of art? And I know generally, if somebody asked me that, I know generally what they asked me. They were saying, like, what's something that was shown in the gallery? But if I'm really being honest, I'll be like,
something a whole lot better.
Oh, no, the dopest shit I ever did was when we used to play electric football.
Oh, yeah.
The most creative shit I ever did, ever, was when we played electric football.
Man, that's something that never, because, when
I don't put it in a hierarchy.
Yeah.
Like, that's in the museum, and that was just us as kids. It's like, nah.
When we first started.
That was me at my most creative. If I could ever get back to that level of creativity.
We took that shit to another level, man.
We definitely did.
Like, when you started painting them, and you was, like, painting the eyeballs and shit. That shit was so small, and you was, like, painting the eyeball. That was when, like, the World Football League or USFL came out or something like that.
Yeah.
And then we started stretching them. We started, like, putting a match to it and melted them and stretching them, making them big
their positions.
But you know what? When we went and played Charles
Grayson.
He had the watercolors on there. He made them big, man. Like,
I never forget that moment when I first saw his team. I was like, it was like high school team playing professionals, and I was like, what in the fuck, man? I had never seen no shit like that. But but the whole idea is like, people think, oh, that's just kids playing.
Nah, man.
I don't think like that. It don't matter.
Man.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter where it is, because if we accepted that, half the shit black people do, the most creative shit we do, don't nobody get paid for it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, that's our whole thing. That's our whole thing, is what I call surplus expressivity. Like, we play basketball, you come down, the guy do a 360 dunk the ball. You don't get no extra points for that.
Right.
Not only do you not get any extra points, you have raised the level of difficulty, meaning you are more likely to miss the shot if you do a 360.
You remember we used to play inside, man, with the hangers up on the door, man? Like,
oh, yeah.
Like, all night long.
Oh, man,
y'all need to go to bed,
man. What was the game we used to play with the flicking, the little paper football thing?
Yeah, you kick it on the table.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All that stuff, man. I feel like
that was cool, but that was creative, man.
I'm always trying to tap back into that energy, because I think that inevitably, when I do things where that's the kind of energy, they always turn out to be the richest things. Like, it's just things where I didn't like sit down and said, oh, let me make so-and-so, so-and-so. I mean, some of that just comes with getting older and being an adult, but like, when you really tap into that impulse of just like, I want to do this because it's fly. You know, like, people be asking me sometimes, I just say, why do you do that? Why do you do that? And they want some, I can do an intellectual answer, but sometimes I just say, because the shit is dope, man. It's dope.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
So,
well, like, some of your interviews, you be talking about Tupelo. And I want to kind of, like, take it a little bit into that area. Like, growing up, we grew up, you were in Tupelo for a while.
Right.
Then you moved to Clarksdale. Yeah. And so I wanted to kind of play wordplay a little bit here.
Yeah.
So first thing I wanted to talk about was Carver. Like, when we used to, like, play, on the campus in the summer.
Yeah.
And we used to go into the lunchroom and like, do you remember that? I mean, how much of it do you remember? Like,
I remember a lot of it. I mean, we'd be riding our bicycles. We'd be down when you go down behind Carver. You know what I mean? When
yeah,
they
that
paved
hill.
it, and you can go down that hill behind that. But you know, more than that, more than anything, the whole Carver thing. In my mind, like Carver Junior High or Carver, it was Carver at the time. But in my mind, it's linked to Ruby's, our grandmother's house. Because in the back of the yard,
you could see it. The football.
You could not only could see it, but if you went all the way to the back where the fence was, you could climb over that fence, and you went down that. You know how we used to go through that path? Down that hill, and then you were basically on the playground, Carver's practice field and stuff like that. Yeah. So to me, they were all like, in my mind, they're always linked. It was kind of like Carver was literally linked to the backyard. You know,
when I tell people I lived on campus, like. I mean, both of us, that's what's interesting.
Yeah,
we have that same connection. Like, y'all lived on Kahoma. You know what I mean? And we lived on Carver's campus, like literally on the campus. You know, in the summertime, we played in the school. You know what I mean? We had access, free access to the school. We could go in and out of the buildings, in the lunchroom, eat food, cookies, whatever. I mean, like, and it's amazing, man, like how fresh that's still on your mind. You know, 50 years later, like, man,
because in the first grade, you know, I was in Tupelo in first grade, and Mom and them was still over in Alabama and stuff. And I remember, like, every day, you know, I get up and go to school, but it's like Ruby and Mama they were in the cafeteria. You know what I mean? So it was just like it was all bound up with Carver and everything. You know what I mean? It wasn't really. Some of my earliest memories are like, you remember when Ruby bought the Datsun? What was it? She bought one of the first Japanese.
It was a Simca. It was a Toyota. Simca.
But this back in like 60 something.
That
was the strangest thing ever. I was like, she got a Japanese car. And I always think of it as like, my grandmother was a free thinker, because everybody thought it was weird that she would buy a Japanese car.
Yeah.
At the time, it was kind of weird. It was kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
And I remember going way out on the outskirts of Tupelo, down Highway 49 or whatever that is. The Toyota place was way out. You know, like
on 40. It was on like going toward Mooreville out that way.
Yeah, what is the street where Reed's
East Tupelo
was? The main
that's Main Street. That's Main Street.
Main Street. Like if you just stayed on Main Street.
Keep it on that, right.
It kept going on
past Elvis's house.
Exactly.
And then you keep going.
You would be on the right side.
Right.
Up there.
Yeah, Dan Hester. That was the name of it. Dan Hester.
Dan Hester, exactly.
Yeah. So,
it was like on the edge. It was like on the edge of Tupelo.
Of town.
Like it was on the edge of Tupelo.
Yeah, that was cool, man. I remember going back and forth to Clarksdale in that car. You know what I mean? Like we used to go back and forth, and it seemed like it took like a whole day, man. And it's only like Clarksdale, not even 2 hours, but it seemed like a whole day, man. And like going back and forth to Kahoma. Yeah. And y'all lived in a trailer.
Yep.
Oh man, that trailer.
I was just telling somebody this just the other day, because I was like, if you say you grew up in a trailer, me and Raph was talking about it. If you grew up in the trailer, it has certain connotations now. Like, right. Trailer trash or something like that. But at the time, a trailer was like the Apollo space capsule or something. I remember when we moved I remember Mom and Daddy going to the lot and picking out the trailer.
Yeah.
Before we moved down to Clarksdale, we had just lived in houses. And I remember walking in and thinking like,
so where did they get the trailer at?
Man.
Did they have to take it down there?
They had to take it down there.
Okay.
They took it down there. It was somewhere, I think it was somewhere between Oxford and Batesville. There was you know, on that path you would go down the Clarksdale from Tupelo. Yeah. I remember the day of them shopping for it. I remember them shopping for it. And then like, you know, and then we moved down to Clarksdale, and I think for just a few days we was in somebody else's house.
Man, I remember how hot that trailer was, bro. It like, it was hot, man. Like,
yeah.
And y'all had this, you had this big aquarium in there, right?
Yep.
Am I imagining that?
No, in the dining room.
Yeah,
It was like a
old
space
aquarium.
capsule.
Yeah.
That trailer was like a space capsule. And it was like, that's what I'm saying. People have all these notions of living in a trailer. But at the time, this is Tame, Apollo 7, all this kind of stuff, Apollo 11. It was just very space agey because everything was built into the walls. And it was
but it's
man.
still fresh though. It's just like fresh on my mind because I remember you used to have them. We was talking about dreams and stuff and your fascination. People think with death. Like you used to have these funerals for grasshoppers, man. Like you used to put them in matchboxes, like dead grasshoppers. Like you would put them in a matchbox and then dig a hole and have a funeral for it. You remember that?
A little bit. I remember also using those the cases that watches used to come in, like a Timex would come in a little watch.
Yeah.
Case that had
a coffin or something.
Yeah, coffin, yeah. But see, I had a friend like Tony Gaines.
Yeah,
Tony Gaines, who's one of my neighbors, his grandfather was a mortician.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he actually ended up being a mortician himself. He always said that's what he wanted to do, is be a mortician.
You went out always, okay, gotcha.
Yeah. He was always super, super clear about that.
Did you hang around over there?
Down. Yeah. Oh, I went one time with him in Kosciuszko, Mississippi. I went one time with him.
Yeah.
And we went in the back of the funeral home, and that shit was
weird.
I never forgot that.
Charles, their family were in
right,
funeral
exactly.
business.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but cool, man. Yeah, so Clarksdale, Carver, Kahoma. Kahoma was, it was kind of like y'all had access to Kahoma like we did Carver. Like you had access to the gym, the tennis courts.
Library.
You could you could in the summer you could just go in and out.
Now, yeah, I tell people there. I say, look, I used to fall asleep in the library. I remember falling asleep in the library. My dad come 3 a.m. in the morning. He would come and get me, and I'd be sleeping on the floor. Yeah, I'd be sleep on the floor, carpeted floors in the library.
Yeah.
I'd be sleep on the floor in the stacks, like sleeping in the stacks. He would come and get me, man. Because Miss Green, who was the head librarian, had given me keys. She gave me keys to the library. Yeah. So I could go in and stay in as long as I wanted. She we're closing up for the night. Are you gonna hang out? Yeah, okay, let me
you gonna sleep there. I've
been there like 2, 3 in the morning.
Y'all moved to the house.
On the other side of campus.
Yeah, on the other side. Yeah. But that was cool. And y'all had so many comic books, man. Like that's what really struck me about you and Ralph. Y'all had collected so much, man. And they burned the comic books?
When I went off to Howard, my parents at that time had moved to that other house.
I remember y'all had
the
fire there. Yeah.
Yeah, and the house caught on fire. Like it was I think it was a ice storm, and the power had been knocked out. And then when the power come to turn the power back on, it sent a surge from the thing to the house, and the house caught on fire, and it burned. And my comic books were all in there. I had collected crazy.
Man,
comic
just
books,
think how much you had. Just like those baseball cards that I lost, you'd be like, man, But but like your influences as artists, I know we always kind of looked at you, like you can draw, like you was an amazing sketcher. Yeah. So, but like, who was some of the people, like, let's just say some people that people may not know, like Ned and Jim, like Jim, his backyard, and your dad.
Well, that goes back to the same thing when I'm saying being a non-hierarchical thinker. Like I'm not this is high, this is low. Creativity to me is creativity.
Like Jim's backyard.
And we were around a lot of creative people. Like you said, like our grandfather's backyard. But it was like, first of all, the way he tended to his garden was real specific.
Yeah.
It was right there on the edge, there on the right. And then because he was a bricklayer, but he would have, I remember staring when I was a kid at that it was like a little wading pool, but it was tiny.
Right. Yeah. It was a cooler. He had made it for a cooler for beer and stuff, but it was big enough for us. Yeah. Yeah, it was big
I
enough
just
for us
remember like,
to get in
but
it.
that was a little like, that was a little like.
Now you know he had a big pool back there too. Now.
Yeah, I know the pool. I'm not talking about the pool. I'm talking
Okay.
about like
I
when
know
you
what
went
you're
in the
talking about. Yeah,
backyard.
yeah. It's
On
like
here,
a
on this
brick
side was the
structure on the
barbecue.
ground. Yeah, it's a brick
Exactly. It
structure.
was
Yeah,
low. It
yeah,
was on the ground.
yeah.
I used to stare at that thing, man, when I was a
Yeah,
kid.
yeah. I think it's a cooler. I think it might be still. I may not be there now, but I think it was
Because
a
it had this
cooler for
moss,
beer and
all that
stuff.
moss would be in there and
And
stuff.
he
And then
used
it was like,
those glass brick too. Remember?
that's what I'm
Sometimes.
saying.
Yeah,
I used to stare at that, man. I used to stare at that thing when I was a kid a lot. So
Yeah.
I would say that, like, some of my earliest memories is like staring at that as a structure. I just used to look at it a lot. A lot. I mean, more than any other physical artifact in the backyard, that was something very magical to me about it. Because on a certain level, I didn't know what it was for. It didn't have any apparent. To me, like if you said they put beer in it, I'd be like, okay, was it even deep enough to put beer in it? I mean, maybe you were right. It just never occurred to me. I thought it was like a wading pool, but it was too little.
Yeah,
for you to
I think
get
that's
in.
what it was for. Yeah, actually, a cooler. Because I went back later as a grown person, and I'm like, well, we thought it was so big because we were small,
we're little,
but it really was small, you know.
It was small, exactly.
But yeah,
so that would be one thing, and then inside of, because I was just talking to somebody about this recently too. Inside of Ruben's damn house, man, the first painting I can ever remember, like I remember looking at it more than once, was a painting that I'm pretty sure Ned Ann had done that was right across from the telephone, right?
Okay.
You know how like the telephone was in that little foyer section and then the bathroom was
that little foyer,
well, there was a wall, like if you were facing the door of the bathroom, right to the right there, which was the flip side of
I'm trying
where
to
the
think
telephone
if
was.
I can remember that
There was a
painting
there was a painting on the wall, man. I used to stare at that thing all the time. It was the interior of a church.
I don't remember
It was the
that.
interior of the church, and it had a beam of light coming down into the inside of the church.
So and somebody actually painted it? Like
Ned Ann painted it. I'm almost 100% the Ned Ann painted. I think when I grew up, I used to ask.
Man, how good was Ned Ann, like, as an artist, man? It's amazing.
I would say there's 3 things in the house that I remember visually made an impression on me. One was that painting. 2 was the photograph that had the American plane and had Buddy and Jim, you know, the circle as Navy guys. That picture, and then of course the painting that Ned Ann did of Jim that used to be over the top of the TV.
Right. The
portrait, which I tried to find even when I did my show in London.
I think I got a picture of that.
Yeah, but where's the painting though?
Oh, the painting itself. Oh, okay. Yeah.
They looked for it because I would have put it up. I was going to put it up in that show in London. But
I think Ned Ann. Oh, they couldn't find it.
They couldn't find it. They looked everywhere for it. They couldn't find it. They couldn't find it.
I think I have a photo of Jim. I'm not thinking about the painting, but I got a photo of him where he's standing. You know. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this was like his head. But I always tell people it's like an Andy Warhol, but like if somebody made with barbecue grease or something. That was the look of it to me. I never forgot. I used to stare at the thing, like really stare at it, you know. So
yeah. You went to Miss Herbene's too, right?
Oh,
did you?
Of course.
Yeah.
I
know she was your godmother. Yeah, I knew that. But
No, I grew up in Miss Herbene's, man. I was there when I was like I was probably 3 years old, man, in that kindergarten, man. Barely walking, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I remember looking at those, you know how she had those weeping willow trees in the backyard?
Right.
But see, there was 2 places. That was the place where she landed, but before that, before they redeveloped that whole section over there behind where the mall is and stuff.
Right. Yeah, they call it
what do they call it? Shake rag?
Shake rag, yeah.
Yeah, over there behind the train tracks. That's where
it was, yeah. And she had that picket fence. Yeah.
She had that picket fence, and then behind there were all these weeping willow trees that would be blowing in the wind. When I was a kid, man, I used to stare at them things, man.
Yeah, that was amazing, man. When I be thinking back, I'm like, how much of this is really true and how much of it is my imagination? But you know, stuff like that stick into your brain so much, man. Like, I can remember a lot of days, like, at Carver because we lived there. You know, like some of the activities, the bonfires and you know, the coordinations and the guys, football players walking, and that's why I'm trying to do the documentary, man. It's like that stuff is just so, you know, vivid, you know, more than stuff that happened to me like 10 years ago or 5 years ago. That stuff leaves you, but stuff that happened to you like when you were like birth to 5 and 10, like
no,
that,
it
man,
was surreal.
You,
the word I would use is surreal. It was surreal.
Yeah.
Like you say, vivid, the intensity of the way, the motion and the sounds and the way people's vibes. And then Black people had much more coherent or consolidated communities then in a way. So it just seemed richer, richer in some ways.
It was rich. Like you say, it's just, it had substance to it. Now it just seems like everybody's so splintered, man. Like nobody, even if you're living in the same neighborhood, nobody knows each other. You know, it's just weird now, man. Like, but like, when did you really, I know you went to Howard, you know, you studied architecture, but did you know, like, when you were real young that you were like really gifted as an artist? I mean, did you feel like that, or you just kind of like you were doing your own thing? You didn't know how you compared to other people, or you had that much confidence in your art? Or
well, you know, those things are not mutually exclusive. I think I had a certain kind of insecurity on one hand, but on the other hand, I also was I would get excited about shit. You know?
Why were you insecure? Because it was different? What, because you were different?
Not the difference. I just didn't know, like, you know, like relative to somebody else, I was like, I don't really know, you know, if this is good or something like that. But I did get a charge from it. Like, if I did something that I thought was dope or super creative, I got a charge from it. Like, it was so for example, like we were talking about the Charles Grayson thing. When I saw Charles' stuff, first of all, I was slightly intimidated because they were bigger than my man. But I also thought they looked really, there was something, it wasn't just that the paint made his man bigger. It was that it made them they look realer to me. Like the texture was real. It wasn't like the enamel.
Because they used the temporal.
That temporal paint. It didn't look like the enamel paint. The enamel made people look more like statues.
Right.
But that temporal paint had more texture to it. It made people
that was something. Yeah, because I started painting mine all the time with the temporal, man. Because I like that feel. You know.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing about it was like, I recognized that it was innovative on one hand because it was just different, but also could see that it was more beautiful to me. I was like, oh, this is more beautiful. And then, but my thing was always, even if I saw something that I thought was dope, my thing would always be, how do you make it doper? And that's when it was like, man, if you combine stretching these guys, I remember stretching the players, heating them up, stretching them, so they would be almost like too skinny.
Yeah.
The frame, because I make their frame bigger.
Right.
But then I would go over it like, whereas Charles would do his like every couple of weeks, he would change the uniforms. I just remember like for 4 straight days, coat after coat.
Hey, you remember when we put the magnets under there? We slipped the magnets under there, man.
And you could turn the game up like 4 times as high. And every time you like faster, harder, more violent. I loved it.
Yeah, they didn't know what hit them then.
Yeah, I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, man. So, like, what about AJ, man? Like, what kind of impact did he have artistically on you? Or do you recognize it, or is it just because he was your dad? Because sometimes people will be your dad and you don't really see it sometimes.
Well, I saw it just because I just felt like my parents, they were always free thinkers. They always just sort of went their own way. Like, even for our family, even moving to Clarksdale, because we didn't want to be in Clarksdale. We wanted to be in Tupelo, where everybody else was. But my parents would just make these decisions that would seem at the time like,
I remember y'all had that barber's chair, man, that barber's chair in y'all's house.
A bunch of them, 3 of them. It was 3 of them. My dad would definitely, in hindsight, I look back on it, and I have this, all of us had this little bit, he would get obsessed with for something. And then if he got obsessed with it, it's like the barber chair. I remember thinking like, this is so crazy. Who has a barber chair in the house? I mean, it ain't that deep now. You think about it, it's not that deep. What's wrong with having a barber chair in your house? But I used to be like, how come you got a barber chair in your house?
Yeah.
And then he would customize the chairs.
Yeah,
the chairs were customized.
Because they had some buttons on them. You remember those tacks?
Yeah, those little
upholster stuff with. Yeah. He had
studs.
that on there. Yeah, that was cool, man.
But I mean, the main thing, I think the connection between the two is just that going your own way, not being afraid to customize stuff.
Right.
Like you don't have to just take a thing the way it's given to you. Like with the football men, they came out of the package a certain kind of way, and that was cool.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as cool as when people started making up their own uniforms, their own teams.
Yeah, that was cool, man.
Just innovation, man. Innovation.
Well, look, man, what about now, man? I mean, I know right now we can't do a whole lot, you know. I mean, we can do a lot. I mean, actually, there's more. It makes more work when you got time to do it. But, like, what's going on, man? Like, we know we just did Kanye, but what's going on?
Well, for me personally, I'm just kind of like, because I like to feel like in some ways, this last going on 5 years now, it's just been like a dead run, man. Like, honestly, I just been going from one thing. I literally been like living out of my suitcase for 4 years, you know?
Yeah.
And I look back on it, I say, wow, it's 4 years going on 5 years now.
So you catching your breath now a little bit.
At the end of the year, I remember telling Gavin and everything, look, I'm going to cut my travel by 2/3 this year. That's what I said. I told everybody. I'm cutting my travel by 2/3 this year. Because it was getting to the point where I couldn't really focus on getting the new work done because I was running from one thing to the next.
Right.
And then it started off, I was flying here, flying there. It was crazy. And then COVID happened. And then it was like, okay, there you go. You got your 2/3 less travel. You know, and it just... The moment I'm at now is really a moment where I've been catching my breath a little bit. But I'm also trying to dial in on what I would say best practices. Or not just best practices, my best impulses. Like even in the last 5, 6, 7 years or so, I asked myself, looking back on what I've done, like what was the frame of mind you in when you did X, Y, and Z?
Okay.
Because sometimes it's hard to have, you know how you can have different stages in your life, and it's not until you get through that stage and you look back and say, oh, that was a moment. It had a certain vibe. Like for me, like when I was in Atlanta working with the Achilles and all that was a certain moment in my life. It had a certain vibe.
Right.
And then once I left there, that moment was over. It was another moment. You know, it had a certain vibe. And sometimes you look back on it. Sometimes those moments are connected to change. Like for me, being in Atlanta, Hans being down there, you know, that it was just working with the Achilles. There was a lot of new stuff going on at the same time. Sometimes it's that. And for me, like, again, I just think about, that's why I'm saying I can say, oh, making an electric football man. Like that was me at my best. Or, you know, when I did Dreams of Colder Than Death, when I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just, I know one thing is true. The less oversight I have, the better I do, number one. So I always try to create situations where I don't have oversight, you know, where I really am free.
And like I think
even free of my own presumptions about what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
Not just imposed from outside. Even sometimes you have internal oversight. You know, you criticize yourself in a certain kind of way. Or you're judging yourself in a certain kind of way, as opposed to you're so caught up in something, you're just doing it. You ain't even, I wouldn't have even known to judge Love Is the Message when I was making it, because I didn't know I was making anything. I was just stringing some footage together. So I didn't even have, it never occurred to me to be critical of it, or to say, oh, is this going to be good, or is this going to be this? It never even occurred to me, because I didn't know I was making anything that was good or bad.
Wow.
I was just making something. It's like the electric football thing.
It's good to be in that position now, that to be able to just do stuff, and because people are, you know, they're recognizing your talent. You know what I mean? You don't have to worry about, well, is it going to be good or not? You know what I mean? You just do it, You know,
I mean,
people,
people who are successful definitely still worry about whether some shit is good or not.
Uh-huh.
I know it in myself, but I could tell when I start to feel like that. I try to definitely have strategies and things that I try to do to get myself out of that head. You know, like I work really hard at thinking about anything I do or anything I conceive of doing as being beyond good or bad. Like I find good or bad to not be a very productive binary to operate.
It's whether you like it or not.
Even not so much whether I like it. It's just like saying, for example, Mount Kilimanjaro. I started telling people, I want to make art like Mount Kilimanjaro.
And
they said, what do you mean by that?
It or not.
You don't care. It ain't, is that a good mountain or a bad mountain? That's a silly question.
Yeah.
It kind of just is. You might like certain things about it. You might not, other things you don't like. You might prefer Mount Fuji to Mount Kilimanjaro. But Mount Kilimanjaro could give a fuck. It ain't, it's not like, it's not here to be judged. It's bigger than judging it. You know what I mean? And so the thing is like, I think of things like specific. Like, I want to make work that's very specific. Like, I want it to be specific. I want it to be close to my feelings about what I was doing.
I was listening to you. You was talking about, like, couple, I think it's In Your Face interview. The lady was asking me, you know what I mean? Like, you made that statement that I make my art for Black people. You know, I'm speaking to Black people. And she's like, well, okay, white people like, you know what I mean? And then you told her, you know, and I've heard you say this a few times, it's like, when you make art, you don't have to, but the best art is made when you're making it for a specific person, kind of, not person, but
entity, you got a target. You have a target.
A target.
You're speaking to a specific, you know, you're speaking to a specific entity.
And if you hit that target, everything else is gonna fall in place. People are gonna like it because you hone in so much on that particular target, it becomes great piece of work, and other people will like it, even though you weren't talking specifically to them.
I mean, look at the one area where Black people have definitely done the most, and that's music, right? Even more than athletics, it's like music, you know, because in athletics we got a lot of incredible athletes, but like in some ways, it's, you know, there's only 5 people can be on the floor at a certain time. You know, it's like, whereas music, there's no limit to how many things can be out at the same time.
Right.
You get to the level you get to based on what you do. And the thing is like, in the space of music, man, we operate so freely. You know, we operate very, very freely. We don't operate like Black people are making music for their own taste. They're not saying, oh, if I want the biggest hit,
I agree.
Like,
man.
I gotta be thinking about what's so and so is gonna.
And the perfect example is trap, is because, like, you know, those young kids, like, they were sticking to something they liked, you know what I mean, that was hitting them. Everybody's telling them, well, this ain't real hip hop, you know, blah 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 blah. But look at it now, like, everything that's good. You know what I mean? Everything that's good, it came from it. You know what I mean? Like, it's got that root of it in trap, man. If it's good now, you know what I mean? So yeah, I agree with you, man. But
no, it's about following you. People think like winning in somebody else's house is about trying to appeal to them, and it's not even about that. It's about you gotta amaze yourself first. That's the thing. Like, you gotta look at some shit and be like, this shit is dope. Even if nobody else feels it's dope. If you're feeling it yourself, because like with Future, when I think of like folks who did trap and stuff, they had to have the conviction of their own vibe. Like, they had to keep doing it, because in the beginning, people wasn't feeling it. It was just them feeling it. But they just kept going with it, and eventually people started being converted. Or you create a context, like, you know, in Atlanta, of course, it was like Magic City. There wasn't a radio. That shit wasn't playing. When nobody playing that shit on the radio.
Right.
But they were playing that shit in
feel.
Magic City. It was playing in Magic City. So it's like, it's always that. It's like, it's really about being specific in your address.
Yeah. And I think too, you know, I'm kind of like just now at 58, you know, trying to see myself more, you know, I'm trying to get into another area of my life, and art, you know, writing is kind of the thing that I'm focusing in on. And I agree that like when you do something, if you put everything that you got into it, you know what I mean, and you know that it's good, whether nobody else that you, I think sometimes we kind of focus on people that are close to us, not, you know, getting their critique when
Right.
those people really, they, for some reason, the people that are close to you, they don't give you the best critiques because they got these emotional things that get in the way. You know what I'm saying? So you got to look beyond them, man.
Yeah, I tell
and I'm
people
just
this
not
all
finding that out myself, man.
I tell people that all the time. You can't win with your family supporting this shit.
Right. Or your friends or people around you.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
That's what I mean.
Family.
That's
yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean.
yeah.
When I family, I mean your friends,
Right,
people around you. Because they want to like the shit because they like you. And then it don't mean just because somebody in your family don't mean they got good taste. First of all, in the first place.
Yeah.
And then they just, so it's not a good, I remember like, you know, my parents, man, they're very supportive. So they try to roll out to everything, you know, you do, me and my brothers do. And sometimes people will tell me even now, how come you didn't tell me you were doing X, Y, and Z? And I say, well, it never occurs to me because I never think of my family, friends, associates, loved ones as being my market. You know, it's not my market.
Right.
It's not like,
and that's hard for a new artist to do, man, because when you put something out, of course you want to put it out to the people you know. You be like, oh, you know, and they don't give you no kind of response, and it can be discouraging, you know, to you.
Yeah, but you can't even see it like that. That's not how I see it.
I know.
That's not how I see it. I see it like, hey, Motown ain't no hit because everybody and their friends and family are buying the records. You know what I mean?
Right. There's millions
of other people because people
there,
who don't know. Even if you had 1 million people in your family, you can't win by just having your family go out and buy. That just means you're spending your own money.
Yeah.
Even if you had 1 million people in your family, if everybody goes out and buy your record, you're not that's no income really. It's not bringing income into your circle.
Yeah.
You know, If the thing is amazing, it'll convince people who don't even understand your language. They don't know where you came from. They don't know nothing about your background. You know, and that's always the goal, to speak in as powerful and is as lucid and is as beautiful, you know, and as weird and uniquely a way as you can. You know, not to make your shit like everybody else's shit. It's just like, yeah. I don't ever think people can win a lot of different ways, but I think when Black people win, the biggest, when they hit the jackpot, is because they always did their own unique thing. The jackpot. That's got to be like James Brown. Yeah, he started off as an imitator of Little Richard, but very quickly he realized, I got to be James Brown. I got to do my own thing. And that's why he won like the way he won, you know? So,
yeah. So your new, do you want to talk anything about your new company or no, that's not
really? We can talk about it because it's definitely about to roll out. You know, in this period, I've been like, you know, fire truck.
Oh, okay.
Damn. I don't see no smoke. Fire trucks.
Well, you know, fire trucks go to everything now. You know, the first responders, ETS, sometimes they're fire.
2 big old fire trucks, though.
Oh, wow.
Like not an ambulance or anything.
Oh,
anyway,
okay.
But, I mean, 2 big fire trucks.
Be careful.
I'm looking. Yeah. But, you know, look, like for me, this moment, like I said, you know, I've gotten a sort of externally imposed break that I was asking for, but couldn't quite figure out how to manage, you know, how to actually implement. So now I got a break, and You know, I'm doubling down on my art stuff. Like even just in this last week, I feel like I've had some conceptual breakthroughs that are going to be huge for me in my art thing.
Oh,
you know,
cool.
I mean, really, I was talking to Gavin about the other day, man. I figured out some things, man, that I think are going to have huge implications. But at the same time, I'm also very, very focusedly implementing some of these long-term ideas I had about a film company, you know, and how I think films could be made, you know, and how what's sort of required for us to make a black cinema, as I like to say it sometimes, you know, like the music, or, you know, with the power, beauty, and alienation of black music. Like how do we get at that? How do we do that? And it's not as simple as saying we want to do it. A lot of people out here say they want to make black cinema, but I don't think
visual
it's
intonation.
Okay, it's like ideas. These ideas and these names and stuff are just an attempt to name things that you feel and you can see, but don't necessarily exist. Sometimes they're purely conceptual things. Sometimes they're aspects of other people's work where you say, yo, that shit right there is really dope. Like what we do should be like that, but more like that. Then that thing is even like that. So, you know, I always talked about for a long, long time, over 20 years, going 30 years now, I was just saying like Motown is the best model for like black cinema. I mean, like it's a model that I think works. It's an institution. It's a secular institution. There's certain things about how Motown was structured that I think had a lot to do with this success, because there was black music prior to Motown, obviously, but nobody basically, in a sense, like took the Henry Ford model, which is what Barry Gordy essentially did. He took the Henry Ford model and he applied it to the production of black music. So in other words, he figured out not how to just make black music, but how to manufacture black music. And that's why, like, once they figured out a good recipe and a good model, because of how they were set up, they could just continually make things that were operating on a certain level, you know. Now, eventually, there's a limit to that model, too. Like, assembly line is good for certain things, but other things it's not good for. It's not good for, like, when we talk about taking the electric football man and customizing them. It's not good for that.
Right.
You know, but it's like anything. You grow and you learn. So the whole idea is it's a Motown plus model. You know, it's not just Motown.
Is it part of it to take advantage of just how much talent is out there? Is that one of the reasons why you want to do it?
Yeah, but I'm not doing
mass production type.
Well, I'm not doing it to take advantage of that talent. That's not why I'm doing it. But one of the reasons I think he can't fail is because of that talent.
There's so much talent out there.
There's so much talent. And the thing is, I always tell people, you know, you've heard me say this, it's like we're walking around knee deep in oil looking for gold.
Right.
Because somebody told us gold was what's mattered. So we just like knee deep in the shit, talent. Because people just say they don't value it. And because they don't value it, it's kind of like you could have a pile of diamonds at your feet. And if everybody just keep walking by that shit every day like it don't matter, at a certain point you're gonna be like, it don't matter.
So it's gonna be like a jazz group where all this different talent, even though you're honing it in a group, you're gonna let them be themselves.
Well, I wouldn't call it a group. I wouldn't call it a group because I actually do think it's gonna be a stable of talent. You know what I mean? It's gonna be. It's not gonna be like trying to make everybody else sound like everybody else. There's certain things in terms of production methodology, techniques, and tools that I want people to have access to. And even when I say that, sometimes people will say something like, oh, you're trying to tell people what black cinema has to be. And I'll be like, no, I'm not. I'm just trying to give people more options. Because most people, they'll start, you know, they start like getting antsy if you're saying, oh, you could do this, you can do that. Like you're trying to tell them what to do. But they don't understand that they're working with a model that's more restrictive than that. You know what I mean? Like my favorite analogy is I always tell them, like, I remember when I used to start talking about, you know, different rates, camera rates and stuff like that. People were like, oh, you trying to this and that. And I was like, look, there's like, you know that Crayola box that has the 5, 7, 8 colors in it? It's got red, green, and blue, orange, yellow, You know, and then it got brown, black, and white.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I would tell people, yeah, but you know that big box, they got the 84
with the sharpener on it.
exactly, with the 64 colors or whatever it was, 84,
Yeah.
64 colors. I was like, the big box, I'm just trying to give you the big box.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to tell you what the color. I'm not trying to even tell you what color to use. If you want to, you can still use those same colors because those colors are in the big box.
Right.
But you're not limited to those colors.
Right.
You may find out that pink or burnt sienna or, you know, or
taupe.
like I'm trying to, yeah, taupe. Yeah, you know, or something like this. Might be your favorite colors. Those might be the colors that move you.
Yeah.
It may be like if you know, like in the same way if you take red and yellow, you know, in between red and yellow is orange. If you mix red and yellow, you get orange, right? There's a color in between. But what if like you got red, but you put red next to burnt sienna? You start talking about getting at colors that you can't even get at with just those basic colors. You know what I mean? You need to have a more complex.
Well, have you run it by anybody? How many people have you run it by, or are you just kind of like
I've been running it by people for 30. No, I've been running it by people for 30 years now.
Yeah,
but we
now
definitely.
They listen. Now they listening though, right?
We are incorporated now.
Yeah.
You know, we have you know, a series. We think we have. I don't want to jinx it, but I think we have an investor.
Okay.
We know we have a barrel plan now. We have a business plan. It's real. It's legitimate. It's coming.
Right. Yeah.
It's coming. I mean, like I said, hopefully people love what we do, but initially it's not even about people loving what we do. Initially it's about just making something that's fresh.
Yeah.
Making something that's fresh. Just like you said,
something
like
that nobody else has done. You know, I can't really think of nobody that's tried that. You know, there's a few black studios and things like that out there, but man, I appreciate you, man, keeping me in the.
I sent you the perspectives.
Yeah.
So you know, like in it, there's just certain things that nobody out here has put this thing at the very center of what it's even proposing.
Yeah.
People just talk about making good movies. They talk about diversity and all this kind of stuff. Making good movies. I'm like, fuck diversity. I want to make some black shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I appreciate you keeping me in the loop, man, on all this stuff, man. It's really like inspired me, you know, the last 4 years, just kind of like, you know, because we kind of got out of touch for a while with each other, you know,
just
through life, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, some of them just growing up and having kids and stuff and going young, but
But, you know, it was good, man, to reconnect and everything. We've been kind of close, man, so stay in touch, man. And I'm gonna be free, you know, to be able to do some stuff I want to do, man. So hopefully we can get together and do some shit once all this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Like,
not even over. Yeah.
But even your books and stuff, I always be telling you, like, I was like, I could see that, man, when I was like, oh, this is a hit right here as a movie, you know? It's a hit. So you want to just get in a position where, because I think, again, my best impulses are just that, impulses.
Right.
But the thing is like, you got to have the resources to make an impulse happen.
Right.
You know, and so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to have a situation where we don't even have to look for nobody else to greenlight our shit. We can greenlight it. You know what I mean? Like, oh yeah, we like this idea. Make it happen. Do it. Do it. Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay, man. Well, I'm gonna let you go, man. I know you're busy, man. I appreciate all the time, man.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Y'all stay safe and healthy, man.
We're trying.
Yeah, the family agrees, man. All right.
Yeah.
Take it easy, bro.
Okay, talk to you later.
Peace.
Okay, man.
Okay.
Peace. Okay.
Yep.
Oh, I took a picture of it.